Hi, welcome back to Seajay Creates. I'm Seajay, and I create stuff. This is week 3 of my month-long drawing challenge for April, called PLZ April, where I'm drawing mega forms for all of the Pokemon that have been leaked to be getting mega forms in Pokemon Legends ZA. PLZA, PLZ April, you know how to read. You get it, I'm sure. But this is your warning right now. You don't want spoilers? Watch this video in a couple months, okay? Give it some time, because otherwise you're going to get mad at me, and I feel like I've been very clear, so don't get mad at me, okay? That's the deal. You're still here. Sweet. Let's talk Mega Pokemon. The first of 6 Mega Pokemon that we're going to talk about today is Mega Feraligatr. Now, I've already drawn Mega Feraligatr back when they announced the starters for PLZ April. I think it was a couple months ago. It's been a blur. I don't remember, but I'm not going to give you a full breakdown of this design, since I kind of already did that, and you can go watch that video if you haven't already. But you will see some changes here, and so I want to walk you through them. My concept for Mega Feraligatr is to really capitalize on his toughness. A lot of base Feraligatr's lore, Pokedex entries, that kind of stuff is about how tough his scales are specifically, and so that's what we're looking to capitalize on. Apparently, if you just brush by a normal Feraligatr, his scales are so rough and aggressively shaped that I guess even that can cause injury. Well, I want Mega Feraligatr to take that to a whole new level. You can see that he's a steel type. I feel like that's probably pretty obvious, and that his back fin as well as his arm and leg bands have been metallicized. That doesn't feel like a real word, but they've got metal tips to them now, or the bands themselves are just straight up steel. These are very sharp, and this allows Feraligatr to essentially whip its body around at high speeds and use these even harder, stronger, tougher scales to just touch you and cause injury. His tail specifically is one of the primary changes I've made between this design and my previous design. I don't know if it's super obvious. I feel like it is, but it's now a big alligator head shape. It was already a big tail. It was a really, really big tail in my initial design, and I wanted to keep it that way, but now I feel like it's a little bit more on brand for Feraligatr. Feraligatr is able to use this massive tail, not as a mouth, it just looks like a Feraligatr head, but it uses it as a weapon. It swings it around, this incredibly elongated tail, with this elongated sail on it as like a big battle axe, a double-bladed, double-sided, whatever it's called, battle axe. I imagine that this makes landing physical attacks on Mega Feraligatr quite difficult, as getting close is a challenge in and of itself. With that big tail swinging around, being able to cover this Pokemon's entire body and protect it, it's going to be difficult to land a punch. Meet Mega Feraligatr. Mega Feraligatr's body is covered in hard steel scales so sharp they give injury to anything that even brushes past them. This, combined with the enlarged tail and head spikes possessing their own razor-sharp edges, make Feraligatr a fierce opponent in any situation. Next on our list is going to be a special case, because honestly, I don't even know if we as players will get access to this Mega form. I'm talking about AZ's Mega Floette. Now, I label it that because, again, I don't think we're going to get access to it, and this is AZ's Floette Mega Evolved, at least according to the leaks. I don't think normal Floette will be getting a Mega Evolution or anything similar to it. And this one's interesting to me because there's a lot of lore behind AZ and Floette, so it'll be interesting to see if any of that lore really plays into what this Mega Evolution looks like. For those of you who don't know, the short and long of it is that a really long time ago, AZ's Floette participated in a war, died in that war, and so he created a big machine that brought it back to life, but I believe it sacrificed the lives of Pokemon to do so, and he also ended up turning it into a weapon out of his own rage, even though he'd already resurrected his Pokemon, and kind of was a villain. And then now Floette had left him, and then 3,000 years later, Pokemon made like a little animated short where Floette comes back to him. Honestly, I never played the game. I don't have the full grasp of it, but I know that it's a fan favorite story and that it is really interesting. In making this Mega form for Floette, I decided that it was probably best to focus on the flower. Floette in and of itself is cute. I like it a lot. No issues with Floette. But it's already got that big focal point, and so that's where I want the focus to remain. Something interesting should happen to that flower, and I'll give Floette itself little touch-ups here and there to make it part of this Mega Evolution instead of just holding a Mega Evolved flower. But this eternal flower, this unique flower that it's holding as part of this form, is really where I want my focus to remain. That's why I think the most interesting idea that I can have is to bring the flower to life. Now, it's a flower, so it was alive and then was picked, but Floette's keeping it alive. I don't understand the consequences of Floette picking a flower. But what I do know is that holding the flower does not make it a grass type, and so I'm just going to turn this flower into a dragon and give this mega form the secondary typing of dragon. You'll see that its stem has become elongated and thorny. It's got some leaves on it now, and that the head of the flower itself, the petals, have eyes on them, and they can function kind of like a 3-piece mouth. This Mega Evolution comes about because Floette does forgive AZ, as we know, like that's canon, and I believe that love that it has for its trainer and its forgiveness to him, those strong emotions are channeled into this flower, which is what gives it this form. This is what really instigates Mega Evolution for Floette, is these strong emotions towards its trainer more than anything else. Meet AZ's Mega Floette, a Mega Evolution brought on by the power of love and forgiveness for its trainer. Mega Floette's flower embodies its strong emotions and can unleash deadly attacks using them. A peculiar evolution, it is the only one of its kind in the world. Next up, let's talk Froslass. Now, I am a big Froslass enjoyer. You've probably noticed if you followed my channel for any amount of time, I love my ghost-type Pokemon. Dusknoir, Froslass, Mismagius especially. So, Gen 4 ghosts, that just gets me excited. To see Glalie get a Mega Evolution was awesome. I love Glalie, regardless of how goofy its Mega Evolution might look. So, I was so excited to see Froslass get a Mega Evolution to match. Or at least it's leaked to be getting one. So, not confirmed. So, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high, but they're pretty high right now. Regardless, Froslass is interesting because it falls into a category of Pokemon that are essentially Japanese yokai. For those of you unfamiliar, think of them as like the spirits, fairies, trolls, whatever you kind of picture when you think magical creature of the Japanese world. The primary difference between a yokai, though, and like a magical creature is that a yokai is usually some kind of spirit rather than like a little guy that just runs around and does stuff. And they're a lot more peculiar. Things like spirits that pretend to be women but actually have huge mouths in the back of their head, which inspired Pokemon like Mawile, or the Kappa, which is like this turtle frog birdman thing that'll crawl out of rivers and kidnap children and then they turn into Kappa. I don't think there's a specific Pokemon based on that, but it exists. These are a lot more malicious spirits than like your brownies and your fairies, things that can be helpful to humans sometimes in terms of like Western mythologies. For those of you unfamiliar with Froslass's lore, it literally likes to prey on specifically handsome male hikers who get lost in the mountains. And I'm not even kidding about this, but some of its Pokedex entries say that the specifically handsomest men that it finds, it will freeze solid and keep as like a collection, some kind of statuary of frozen hot men. Except they're just frozen and physically hot, not like, well, physically hot. I don't know how to explain that. You guys get what I'm saying. It likes hot men, it freezes them, and then it keeps them forever. That is much more in line with a traditional Japanese yokai than anything we have here out west. You'll notice too that in its design, it's fairly Japanese. It wears a kimono. It has these big swooping sleeves for its arms, even though they're connected to its head instead of its body. So I wanted to really retain that Japanese imagery by retaining a lot of the shape language of Froslass while accentuating some of the other features. Things like its horns, which I've tried to make look more like Oni horns than anything else. Admittedly, I did elongate the end of the sash that would be around its kimono into these big butterfly wings, and on its sleeves, I added this snowflake decal to really accentuate its ability to freeze things. So There are my own tweaks there, of course, but for the most part, I just want it to be Froslass, but more. I want it to be able to appear to stranded hikers and look kind of like a savior with these big angelic wings, only for them to realize that in actuality, this is a trap. They're about to be frozen and collected, just like everything else. Meet Mega Froslass. Mega Froslass likes to present itself to handsome hikers who seem lost in the mountains. Thinking they are saved by a heavenly figure, they rush forward only to be frozen instantly by its icy breath. Its breath can reach temperatures of minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit. This next one is tricky, okay? It's not just a fan favorite, it's like the fan favorite. There are certain Pokemon that really enter into a pantheon of their own, and Greninja is definitely one of them. To be fair, though, Greninja is also friggin' cool, okay? I mean, it's a ninja frog with a tongue scarf, and it can create shurikens out of water and throw them, like, incredible, honestly. It's a fantastic Pokemon, and I love its design. The issue that I ran into is I didn't quite know where to go with this one. It took me a really long time to find something that I felt like I could really contribute when Mega Evolving this Pokemon. When I make a design, especially if it relates back to an existing Pokemon, I want to make sure that I'm not just riffing on what's already there, right? I want to bring my own concepts to the table and really show some work and hopefully some artistry as well. If I see someone else's design out in the zeitgeist, I don't copy it, I don't think about it, I don't allow myself to do anything close to it. And people have loved Greninja for so long that there are a bajillion designs out there. So it's hard to come up with something that to me feels like it's original and my own. Then I had an idea. Obviously, the shurikens are a big focus with Greninja. Even though they're not in like his official artwork as part of the base design, I know they are for Ash Greninja, but just base Greninja, they aren't there, but we know that's kind of his main thing, right? These water shurikens that he makes. Very cool. I decided to kind of riff on him being a frog a little bit. It's not super common, and meaning it doesn't happen in all frogs, but there are actually some frogs with splits in the end of their tongue, so they can have a little bit more surface area to grab onto things with. I decided that it would be interesting to give Greninja this split in its tongue so that it could hold water shurikens in the tongue. Not even just hold, I want it to be able to generate, hold, and spin these water shurikens in its tongue. And I decided that this alone wasn't going to be enough. I wanted to do this for its hands as well. So now each hand has really, really long fingers, and there's only 2 instead of 3 like it has previously, that can hold this water shuriken that it generates between its fingers and spin it at super, super high speeds. The idea is that these shurikens have been elevated not just to a throwable weapon, which they definitely still are, but now they're also like a handheld tool. He can hold on to them and use them while fighting without having to throw them only. You know what I mean? Even his toes are a little bit longer, and I imagine that the water shurikens he can generate there are still water shurikens, but they're just going to be a lot smaller than the big ones in his hand and in his tongue. Meet Mega Greninja. Mega Greninja's fingers and toes have elongated to extreme lengths, and its tongue has developed a split. This adaptation allows it to generate, hold, and spin giant water shuriken from each limb and its tongue. When spun at high speeds, they can cut strong steel. Hawlucha is a really interesting Pokemon. I think we can all agree on that, but I also feel like Pokemon kind of made him interesting, put him on Ash's team, and then didn't do anything with him ever again. I mean, Hawlucha possesses the only dual type move in all of Pokemon. Flying Press, which is its signature move, is both flying and fighting type. That is so cool, and Pokemon's never done anything like that ever again. In fact, they decided that it was so cool that they would never use Hawlucha for anything interesting until now, when it's getting a Mega Evolution, which gets me so excited. All of my inspiration for this Mega Evolution comes specifically from one episode of the Pokemon X and Y anime. I may not have played the games, but I did watch all of the anime. And specifically, the episode that I'm referencing is one in which Ash's Hawlucha basically joins this. It's not a stage production, but it's like a WWE style overproduced wrestling match type of scenario that is a stage production at the same time. I don't understand it very well, but it's fun because he goes up against a shiny Hawlucha, which for those of you that don't know, shiny Hawlucha is like this black, much darker looking counterpart to Hawlucha. It's very cool, but also shiny Pokemon aren't as accessible. So I want to make a Mega Evolution that can take the place of that heel, that dark counterpart, the evil wrestler to Hawlucha's good wrestler. In fact, that's why this Pokemon is going to be the first ever triple-typed Pokemon with the first ever triple-typed move in Pokemon history. Now, I don't think this will actually happen. I don't think it's realistic, but I do think it's a cool idea, and it's my YouTube video, so no one can stop me except for my wife, and she doesn't understand what that means. So, she won't. We're good. It's going to be Fighting, Flying, Dark type. 3 types, and now it will know the move Dark Flying Press, which is also Fighting, Flying, Dark typed. I imagine that this Pokemon, kind of like Galarian Moltres, is going to just radiate that dark energy. That's why its cape and feathers are kind of now more in tatters. It's got a much gruffer appearance, and it's got a much darker color scheme to go along with it. The inside of its cape is now bright red with this little eyeball pattern in there. I don't know, it's kind of cheesy looking, but I think that it really lends itself to these wrestling aspects that I really love about Hawlucha. In fact, this entire design is supposed to be just a little bit bigger, a lot meaner, and a lot more evil in appearance. It's not necessarily evil, but it is playing the part of that heel. Meet Mega Hawlucha, the first and only recorded instance of a Pokemon displaying 3 types. Mega Hawlucha loves to play the counterpart to Hawlucha in wrestling matches. It acts as the perfect dark villain for Hawlucha to defeat as the hero. Last but not least is another Pokemon who much of my knowledge about comes from the Pokemon X and Y anime. For those of you who don't know, Team Flare doesn't really show up in the anime. There's other instances where the evil teams do. I feel like specifically in Sinnoh we saw a lot of Team Galactic. But once we get to Kalos, we don't really see a whole lot of Team Flare, which is okay, but it's funny because there is still a villain that's doing nefarious things behind the scenes of Ash trying to fight all of the gym battles and that kind of stuff. And it's just a bunch of Malamar who are hypnotizing and controlling people for their evil plot to take over the world. It's hilarious and it's awesome. And honestly, I'm a big fan of it. So Mega Malamar has an interesting opportunity to really be a truly evil Mega Evolution. We don't get a lot of Pokemon that are evil. We get some that are mean and some that are used by evil trainers, and so they are kind of also tangentially evil. But there's not a lot of Pokemon that are just designated to straight up always be the bad guy, have nefarious purposes and intents, hypnotize people to try and control world governments. Like, that's crazy lore about Malamar, and I think that its Mega Evolution really needs to lean into this hypnosis aspect. One thing that I really love about vampires is that they can hypnotize people. I shouldn't say really love, that sounds strange, but I think it's an interesting piece of their lore. And if you didn't know, Malamar is a squid, not a vampire. But vampire squids do exist. Now, I've already made my own vampire squid Pokemon, but in terms of concept and honestly everything, it's very different from Malamar. So I don't feel bad making Malamar into a different kind of vampire squid than my original design. In fact, my vampire squid design for Malamar isn't going to be based on vampire squids at all, more just the play on words vampire squid. This design is going to feature a big kind of gothic collar that will resemble the webbed parts of a vampire squid just a little bit, that'll come up around Malamar's neck, as well as, I think it's called a croquette? I don't know. I think of it as an ascot, but when you're talking like early vampire kind of these gothic designs, I don't know the right words for their clothing, okay? Don't hate me. That's the elevated part of this Pokemon as well, is instead of just hypnotizing people to get them to do nefarious things, it's now also going to feed off of their psychic energies. It's going to be like a psychic vampire in every possible sense. It's going to hypnotize people, control them. It's going to use them to bring in more people. It's going to feed on these people. It is not a good Pokemon. And that's kind of awesome. Meet Mega Malamar. Mega Malamar has a way of gaining access to the mind with unparalleled skills. It rotates its long arms in a spiral shape, strobing the patterns on its belly, placing its victims into a trance. It then feeds on the psychic energy of the entranced to keep itself young. This challenge has been nothing but exhausting, and I honestly love that, but I'm also excited to really only have a couple of these Pokemon left. We've done 17 of them, 6 this week alone, and they've been so fun. Let me know what your favorite is, and let me know what Pokemon you still want to see Mega Evolved. Until then, I hope you like these designs, and let me know what your favorite was in the comments. Thank you.